This one line that it really struck home with me: within every adversity is the seed of a greater benefit. When you face a challenge, it's knowing there's a way through this, even if you can't see it yet. Trust that there is a way.
It's like, okay, if I'm in a problem here, I know that there's something within this that is actually going to create a greater opportunity for me if I can just be with the discomfort. If you can see a problem, then there has to be a solution.
The bigger the resistance, the greater the breakthrough. When I've really found myself in challenges, it's that awareness to go, wow, something incredible is on the other side of this. And that's why it feels so challenging. That thinking has really served me over the years. It's great to have that awareness when you're in those moments, or have someone around you that can remind you of that. Because being human, having human nervous systems and conditioning, sometimes we get caught up in the moment and we forget there's something so much bigger.
Welcome to the Always With Me podcast. I'm your host, Fiona Redding, and together we are going to journey into the heart of the human experience through conversations exploring faith, purpose, and our spiritual growth, what it means for us, how it has shaped and transformed us, and what we have discovered, bringing hope and encouragement for you, wherever you find yourself right now and whatever is going on in the world around. This is a show embracing the truth that we are never alone, and that even in our darkest moments, there is a guiding light that leads us home. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome back to this episode of the Always With Me podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined on the show by Bernadette Doyle. So Bernadette is a business coach who has spent 28 years helping people to get clients and make money, and she is now transitioning into spiritual teaching. Welcome to the show, Bernadette.
Thank you so much for inviting me. When I got your invitation and I listened to the intro for this whole podcast series, it was just a really easy yes for me. So I'm really excited about the topics we're going to be discussing today.
Oh, we don't know what we're going to be discussing today, and that's the whole joy of this whole show. And what's really interesting, so I get the little nudge to invite people on the show, and it's either a full-bodied yes or it's not coming on. It's been really interesting. People have just gone, yes, don't need to know anything more about it. And some people have said, can you send me the links to the show? Can you do it? And I just think they're not, it's okay. Like they're not ready to come on the show yet, or they don't want to come on the show, and that's okay. And I don't have to go and follow them up, but it's just the ones that want to come on. I don't think there's even a thought in it. I think it's just a response to a question is yes. And that's the kind of energy we want to bring to this show. So for our listeners, Bernadette and I connected during the pandemic, and I'm going to tell you how this all came about. Very brief. I basically got smashed during COVID. My business was pretty much 100% face-to-face before COVID hit. We then went into lockdowns. I lost about 80% of my business overnight, ran out of money, had to move in with my ex and his partner and their daughter with our two kids while I basically pivoted my business, or worked out how to pivot my business, I should say, and did the home learning with the kids. And so I had to sit down and do an incredibly honest and painful reflection on where I was at and what my strengths are and what my weaknesses were. And one of the things that I identified was that I actually was really bad at sales. Like I was good at networking and I was good at marketing and I was good at doing my thing. But there was the gap for me was the bridge between my people and money, basically. And so I decided I needed to do some sales coaching. So I started looking at just like doing people's free 5-minute quizzes and doing this and doing that. And I'd get in all sorts of people's funnels and I'd do the $30 offer and just go, oh my gosh, this is so not what I want. Anyway, I don't know. I think you and I might have been connected through Denise Duffield-Thomas's program. Somehow you got on my radar, and I can't even remember what I did. I might have watched a masterclass or something of yours. And then the next thing I knew, I was messaging you and you responded to me, and I think we might have jumped on a call. I don't even know if we jumped on a call. And it was like this light bulb went off in my head, and I just thought, this is the person who I need to learn from, because I've actually ended up at the end of her funnel without even realizing I was in a funnel, right? That's actually why I decided to work with you. And honestly, Bernadette, I did not have the money and I'm so I don't know if you actually even know this. I spoke to you, I think, and you must have had a fast action bonus or something like that. Anyway, it was $1,500 or something. I can't remember the exact amount, right? So I had about that much money in my account and I moved it across. And I was living with Brendan and Alex at this stage, and I was no way I could tell them that I was spending this money on that. Or there'd been some money come from the government. I can't remember. Anyway, it took a day or two to transfer, by which time I go to pay and the price had gone up. And I'm like, I didn't transfer that much money across. I don't even have that much money, actually, really. So I messaged you and I said, look, I'm really sorry. I missed the early bird. Is there any chance I can still have that price? And you said to me, you need to speak to my business partner. And I said, no problem. So anyway, I spoke to, I can't remember what his name was. Anyway, and he was all good salesperson, put the pressure on a little bit and what have you. Anyway, I said, if you give me this price, I promise to be the best student you've ever had.
We made good on that. Definitely.
It was all necessary because I had to work really hard to get into that course. Like I did a whole lot of stuff and then it was like, I'm here, and I felt really grateful to be there and really grateful to be in the price I was in, and I knew I wanted to learn from you and stuff. So that's how I ended up working with you, Bernadette, was I actually got to the point of making a financial investment decision to work with you after all of these extremely dodgy, shady, uncomfortable, icky sales processes. And I was like, you are the person I want to learn this from. So there you go.
There's a detail of that story that you omitted, but I think it's worth mentioning because it also shows just how committed you were. Because of the time difference between us, some of those calls were happening like 3:00 in the morning, your time. And I remember you showing up to those calls and me saying, wow, Fiona, how amazing you're here. You're literally getting up in the middle of the night for this. And I remember you saying something like, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it right. And no point in signing up and not being all in. And you definitely brought that energy. I remember like in the first month and then within 3 months, you made an incredible volume of sales. But I think so much of that started because it's like, there was no doubt in your mind when you came in that you were going to make it work, that you were going to be the best student. And it wasn't like I didn't even know that detail about the discount, by the way, but you brought a commitment and an energy. And I think when we have that level of commitment, we really do become unstoppable.
No, I absolutely agree with that. But yeah, I was forced into. Every step made that commitment stronger. And there's something really incredibly powerful about in that I think we often look at adversity and challenges as difficulties, but actually if you can really lean into them, you can rise up to them and you can rise up to meet them. And then you become better through the actual overcoming of the thing that hasn't even got you to where you want to go yet.
Yeah. I remember like one of the first personal development teachers I learned from was Tony Robbins.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was in his first book, Unlimited Power. It was this one line that it really struck home with me. And it's like, within every adversity is the seed of a greater benefit. And it's just you saying that now, I realize how much that's affected me over the years. Is when you face a challenge, it's almost like knowing there's a way through this, even if you can't see it yet. And I've often said that, I like, show me the way. Even though I can't see it yet, I trust that there is a way. Just show me the way.
Yeah. And I remember, I think it was Napoleon Hill actually who first said that the seed within every adversity is a seed of great opportunity, because that actually really stuck with me too. Like, it's okay, if I'm in a problem here, if what I'm seeing is a problem, I know that there's something within this that is actually going to create a greater opportunity for me if I can just be with the discomfort. Something else on that as well. So my teacher talks about like the problem and the solution. If you can see a problem, then there has to be a solution. That's a really powerful mindset to bring to something. And the bigger the problem, therefore, the bigger the solution.
Yeah. Yeah. Like my version of that is like the bigger the resistance, the greater the breakthrough.
Yeah.
And that thinking has really served me over the years. It's like when I've really found myself in challenges, it is that awareness to go, wow, something incredible is on the other side of this.
Yeah.
And that's why it feels so challenging.
But that makes it exciting too. I always get quite excited when I'm like crying on the floor, just thinking, I'll just have this little moment of awareness and I'll think, no, this is good. This is good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great to have that awareness when you're in those moments, or have someone around you that can remind you of that. Yeah. Because being human and having human nervous systems and conditioning, sometimes we can get caught up in the moment and we forget there's something so much bigger.
On that note, Bernadette, I'm really curious. So we haven't spoken now for, I don't know, a couple of years probably, but we do stay in touch on social media. And I actually was thinking of you because I'm like, I haven't seen anything from Bernadette for some time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she's up to something. I was just like, I haven't seen Bernadette's not doing her, doesn't seem to be doing any launches. There's, I don't know, like just from what I could see on social media, Bernadette, you're clearly in the middle of a bit of a transition at the moment, moving away from the focus on sales and money into a more spiritual focus. Now, there's a whole lot I want to talk about this, but we'll get to that. Can you please just share with me and our listeners what has actually been going on for you?
My business journey, I started my first business age 26. I was doing corporate training. I quickly realized that the business model I had, there was like a limit to it. And so it was very early. I came across online marketing and what we called back then information marketing. Now we talk about it as digital creation, digital products. But I saw the opportunity there. And again, it was also from something that I'd read in Tony Robbins, where he was like, if you can find a way to share the value you have to offer the world, but with more people in a bigger way, then without it taking up all of your time to do that, then that's when you can really create some impact. And that really has always excited me. And yeah, I really was an early adopter in the online marketing space and learned from some great mentors, had some amazing experiences, went and hung out with Richard Branson on Necker Island. And it was just a fabulous time. And it was like, it's just so much learning and so much growth. It was amazing. But a few things happened across the way that were like wake up calls for me and a real inkling that, oh, the track I'm on isn't quite right. I remember this quote from Oprah Winfrey when she says, first of all, the universe speaks to you in a whisper. And if you don't get it, you get a little smack on the side of your head. And then if you're still not listening, something will fall on your head. And then if you still aren't paying attention, a house will fall on you. And I think all of us can relate to times in our life when we've maybe had inklings, intuitions, we've resisted it. They're saying, go this way. And it's whatever reason we're resisting that call. And then there are dire consequences that come. So I don't know if I've ever talked to you about this, but one that happened to me was I built a 7-figure business. So my business had been at $1 million for a couple of years. And the model that we had then was where we used to launch something, then we'd have a live event off the back of the launch. So 150 people in a room. And then typically would upsell a coaching program. And it was very lucrative and lots of fun and lots of energy, getting all those people together. But when I started doing this, I said to my mentor at the time, I was talking about where I should do it. And I've always lived in Ireland for most of the time I've been running this business. And I was like, I think I'm probably going to need to go to London because that's where the people are. And he said, where would you really like to do this? And I was like, to do it in my hometown, because then I can finish the training each day and go home and put my kids to bed. They were really small at the time. I think they were just 1 and 2. And he said, of course you can do it in your hometown. So the hometown is called Ennis in County Clare. It's in the west of Ireland. It's this tiny little market. It's a small market town, 30,000 people. But sure enough, I did an event there and it was great. And I launched my first mentoring program doing that. But what happened, and I think this is really easy to happen, is that it's these little subtle things where we get off track. That was like getting started. But then before too long, I did end up moving the event to London. This now became very disruptive, and you'll relate to this as a mum of kids. And I think any mum will, any parent will. But when you're a single parent, it just magnifies. So I now was in a situation where there was just stress every time I was going to do something to serve my audience. And it was the stress of having to pack up and go away for a week and then organize the childcare. And I didn't have a lot of family locally. So it was it was hugely stressful. And I don't think I even realized at the time just how much subconscious stress that was creating for me. I was all set to do this live event and my son JJ got sick and it started out as chicken pox. So I was like, no big deal. And then he developed these lesions, and there's a thing with chicken pox where you can get a secondary bacterial infection. So while he was ill, the plan was that his father at this point lived 250 miles away from us. he was going to come and look after him. Then his father said, no, I'll bring him home. So he was at home, back at his father's home, 250 miles away. And the night before I was due to fly on the plane to go to England, I got a call to say, JJ's seriously ill. He's now been admitted to hospital because this bacteria that's in his system has entered his bloodstream, and we're now worried about organ failure. And honestly, the feeling was absolutely awful, because on the one hand, obviously it was my son and that's the most important thing. But on the other hand, there were 150 people who I knew were traveling, and some of them were traveling from foreign countries, true, from the Netherlands, from Denmark, who were traveling to assemble in London. And up until that point, I was someone, I really think I would have gone on stage with a broken leg, limping on, rather than not show up to do something. But obviously there was like no choice. I really couldn't do the event. And I ended up obviously going to be with my son, and the event was cancelled. No, the event did go ahead. And like a lot of my team and clients and my mentors too rallied to still put on an event and serve the audience was there. But it was just a really horrible experience. And I can remember like having a lot of time sitting next to my son's hospital bed. Really what had happened was he had these lesions, and the bug that he had was starting to eat away his skin. So he had a couple on his underarm, he had one on his neck. And I remember the hospital were like battling to get these under control. And I remember there was one moment where I was looking at him and I was like, I'm pretty certain that if that was on his hand or his foot or his leg now, the hospital would be talking to me about amputation. But because it was right here, it was right here on his neck, clearly that wasn't an option. And incredibly, like, we're really blessed that like he rallied and he survived that. But we were in the hospital for several weeks, and his recovery went on for even after he was discharged, for several months. But I remember like sitting there and going, something's really off here, because I've been teaching people how to have a freedom business, and almost like preaching that you can have this. And yet I'm feeling anything but free. And I'm in this awful situation now where I'm torn between my role isn't even the right word, but I'm a mum, and I'm someone that deeply cares about taking care of my clients. And at this moment, like it didn't work. But I now look back on that and I was like, that was one of the first nudges I've got, which is not that direction. Things are going off track here. Let's do a course correct. And I think it's really helpful to think of them in those terms, that these sort of challenges, or they look like they're things happening to us, but there's such divine planning in it. And in this instance, I'll give you a clue I'll share with you what was the clue for me, that it was like there was a bigger force at play. My boarding pass, my original ticket was to go from Belfast to London. So obviously, because I had to travel across Ireland, and I was now traveling from a different airport. When my son was first sick, I was still I still thought I can still make it to London. I just didn't realize how sick he was. So I had my assistant book me a new ticket. And when I got the new ticket, the boarding pass on the ticket were these letters: 2C4RJJ. My son is called JJ. So the boarding ticket really read 2C4RJJ. So that at that moment, I was like, this is not like an accident. This is not coincidence. This isn't just bad luck that he got sick. It's just something much bigger happening here. So
Bernadette, I've always so enjoyed your story. They're not stories. The way you share a lesson or a story is just so compelling, and I just feel like I listen and I just soak it up. And I have learnt so much from you over the years in the way you share things. So much we go to with this. And just so you know, I'm actually in the middle of a big transition at the moment too. So I basically burnt down the whole online of my business, and I have to go back out into the world. I'm literally not allowed to sit behind a computer anymore. And part of with this as well, because similarly, a single parent, and I was like, I feel like my world has gotten smaller and smaller and contracted, and I'm not meant to be here. I was redirected during COVID, 100%. But it just since that time, my online business, it's just, I don't love most aspects of it. Like, I enjoy delivering. I was finding I was really feeling limited with the clients I was working with as well. I just want to work with visionaries and big businesses and do my whole strategic whatever thing across the whole organization. And then I went back and I realized when I very first started my business, that was my vision, but I didn't have the guts to do it.
Yeah.
And so I spent 10 years going here, there, everywhere, here, there, and nothing was sticking. And I'm like, there's no reason why this shouldn't be sticking. If I was doing what I was meant to be doing, things would have moved by now differently. Yeah. And honestly, since that decision, things have moved in a completely different way. But also we've had a whole lot of family stuff going on. In fact, I've just gotten back this morning from Albury. I had to cancel this week basically so I could go and be with my sister and my nephew. And everything just fell into place for that to happen. While I was away, I had proposals that I put in, like in May, came in and said, yes, we can go ahead for August, so for September. So I ended up getting paid this week for not even having to work from a proposal. And I'm like, this is what being in the right place is. Like, I am meant to be here caring for my family, completely looked after, nothing to worry about. That's like knowing the difference between that place of pushing and striving and hustling versus that place of ease and flow. And it doesn't mean in the place of ease and flow that there's not challenges. It just means it's not hard. It's hard, but not hard.
Yeah, that distinction that the financial advisors make between good debt and bad debt. Yeah. So I was saying about this earlier, that there's good effort and bad effort.
So true.
And I think this is, so I think there's this, so I think some people think that, if you're doing what you're meant to be doing, it's just going to be flow. It's all going to be easy. The doors are going to open. And that's not been my experience. But equally, I think that an energy that like definitely worked for me when I was younger, which was like, just make it happen, just overcome the obstacles no matter what. But it also meant that I developed quite like a pushing energy. I thought that was a good thing. I thought that this is like a sign of my commitment. And I think that there's a real wisdom in knowing when to keep working towards the goal and when to let go. So it sounds like you're in that space of like, okay, just surrender, actually.
Complete surrender. And I know you wanted to talk about receiving coming in on this. And just before we go there, one of the things that I've been looking at, like I'm very metaphysical in my approach, like you, and have amazing mentoring and really try to apply those universal principles. And obviously we're talking about faith and spirituality, like the bringing together of all of that aspects in the physical and the non-physical. But one of the things that I've really been trying to lean deeply into is when I'm talking about effort and action, is actually about really embodying caring, loving service to other people. And I've just had this amazing opportunity over the last few months to really be that for my family. Like I've just been like, okay, I'm just the Empress. I'm just channeling the Empress energy here. That's all I need to do because the Empress is looked after by the Emperor, right?
Yeah.
All she has to do is be abundant and loving and caring and nurturing. And that's all I have been able to do because I've had responsibilities as a parent and obviously my clients and stuff, but it was like all of that fell away and I was like, all I got to focus on is me and my family and my vision and my dreams and knowing that that's all happening and focusing on literally what's right in front of me right now. Like where can I be that loving, caring, kind, compassionate energy right now? Because that's the thing that's actually going to raise my energy, which is going to attract all of these opportunities in for me without any effort because I've done the efforting.
Yeah. And I'm not anti-effort. I actually think, I think for everybody, there's a point where, that thought of if it's going to be, it's up to me. That's a helpful thought because it gets you started and it gets you initiating and like taking action. And most of all, like taking responsibility for it. But the fact is, like, I believe that my boss is God. Mm-hmm. Well, I could go further and say that we're all God, but
you can go further, by the way, Bernadette. This is a space to do that.
If your boss is God, then you don't need to, you're covered. You've got the healthcare. You've got like a benevolent boss that's going to make sure that you get the time off, that you're not going to have to work overtime. And so if you're in a situation where that's happening, not just in your business, but like for many women, they're working overtime in their homes in terms of not getting rest, getting burned out. But if you know that and you allow yourself into that space of I'm being looked after, which is what you're sharing. And I've got a story about that as well too. But if you allow that, then it does fall into a place and it's happening through you, but it's not you making it happen.
Mm. And then there is the space for that inspired effort and action. And fascinatingly, I think when you are in that space, you still can take action, but it's so targeted and inspired. And it's, if I just quickly do this thing now, then I can go over here and do that. And there's such a flow with it when you're in that energy. So what you obviously that you talked about earlier on when JJ had the sickness and you had to go, hang on a minute, we call this in our family a hypocricker, like when you're being a hypocrite, do as I say, not as I do. And that's really, it's very challenging when you get that boing and you're like, oh, here I am. And that happens to me. That has happened to me many times over the years, just through the nature of what I teach. What's shifted things for you now? So you're clearly transitioning into a new direction or a new state of being in your business. Was there a catalyst for that, or have you been more in tune just with those really subtle little nudges?
I would love to tell you that this has been all just seeing the little nudges, and in fact it's been really messy and dramatic. But what I will say is this: I don't think it's any coincidence that about 6 months before this incident happened with JJ, 6 or 8 months, I got the inspiration to create a program called the Receiving Zone. And my plan was to share about receiving. So I've actually been called to this topic for about 14 years. And I've kept, okay, no, I'll get to it later. I'm just going to do this bit first. I'll get to it later. I'm just going to launch this or go and finish this project or do that. And it's just really been nudging me. And even before you and I connected, which was in 2020, I went to a Dr. Joe event and he has us create these mind movies, these visualizations. And I was looking at this mind movie I created in 2019. And in this mind movie, I put my book, The Receiving Zone, is an international bestseller. I haven't written a word of this book, even as we speak here in 2024. But this has been like calling me for a time. And the thought I had is, oh no, but I'm a business teacher. I teach business strategy. I know I've got really effective methods that just really help people to go out and start getting clients. And that's what people really need help with. If they get that bit figured out and they've got the cash flow sorted, then everything, like, that's the most important thing to teach them. So that's what I was telling myself. You're exactly a really good example of why that's not the most important thing to teach. Because you came into my program, you made money straight away. You had a phenomenal month, 3 months, 6 months. And as you then said later, it wasn't sustainable for me long term.
There were so many aspects of it I didn't love. That was the thing. I just felt once the kind of initial excitement had worn off, I was just like, I don't want to do this. This is not how I want to run my business.
So I was in my garden a few months ago when this thought dropped in, which is, there is no business strategy, because I teach business strategy. This is what I've done, and I consider myself to be very good at it. But
you are very good at it, Bernadette. You're very good at it.
That's also an issue, that we can have a zone of competence or an area that we're good at, and then we think, oh, this is what I'm meant to be doing. But the fact is, I've been called to something like so much deeper and more powerful, I think. So the thought that dropped in is, there is no business strategy. Well, it didn't drop in. Let's be honest. It was God talking to me. There is no business strategy that can outpace your capacity to receive. And that's when I realized, this is it. This is what to focus on. Like, not going and finding and tighten up a business strategy or getting the right business strategy, or it's not about strategies at all. It's like, how are we able to receive? And actually, if you're truly able to receive, then maybe the way that you receive, and I'm going to speak financially right now, but maybe the way you receive isn't even through your business.
This is something I'm deeply also exploring at the moment as well, is actually this idea that your money has to come from a certain source. It's like, why? Like, if we live in an abundant, benevolent universe and there's infinite supply and there's infinite flow and there's infinite money, really, like money is just a construct, Why do we have to limit the spaces and the places that it comes from? And what you've said too about the strategy, you can Google a strategy, right? You can YouTube a strategy, you can find a book. I had the strategy in my business, but there was something that was so misaligned for that with me. And that idea of being open to receiving is not just about money. It's about ideas. It's about inspiration. It's about people. It's about opportunities. It's about nudges. It's about all of that. And if we're too set in a course of something having to be a particular way, we close down every single other avenue of anything ever arriving.
Yeah.
But we do need to be focused. And that's it's like focusing on the right things.
Yeah. And I think one of the first things when we start to talk about receiving and being open to receive is how much you believe you're worthy to receive. So I grew up in a Catholic church. I don't know if you're familiar with the Catholic Church, but there's something called the Creed in the Catholic Church. And one of the lines in this is, Lord, I'm not worthy to receive you, but only say the word and I shall be healed. Now, we all know what happens to a child brain up until the age of 7, like they're completely open. It's like anything you hear goes straight in. And I went to mass with my parents at least once a week on a Sunday, but sometimes because of school and things, we had more mass. There was more masses. And I think, God, how many times did I hear those words? And probably even in my mother's womb before I even born, I was hearing this, and it's, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy. So I had a lot of conditioning around I'm not worthy, and it was actually doing work with Dr. Joe Dispenza that really, I remember there was one moment on his events particularly where it just like really landed on, I'm worthy to receive. But when we don't think we're worthy, we think that what we desire in life, that we have to go get it, we have to go make it happen, and we have to create it through hard work. And this is why I think you've heard me make this distinction before. I love making the distinction between hard work and heart work, because like when we're really like in our hearts and being led by our hearts and operating from our hearts and in tune with our hearts, honestly, it's like life just wants to give to you. It's like complete, honestly, I have this experience of complete strangers like giving me things. And it's like when I get into that receiving zone, and I'm like really in that receiving zone, it's just incredible what comes to me, almost like without effort. Yeah, there might be a bit of responding to an opportunity or an invitation or something like that, but it's phenomenal. And I also know I've got lots of personal data of when I'm not in the receiving zone, because it's like it actually feels like the opposite. And I'm sure people listening to this can relate to that, about times in your life when it's like everything was just coming to you versus, my goodness, you couldn't even get arrested.
So what does it mean for you now in terms of how you are transitioning your business? So you obviously heard the calling to you, that is God. You feel like you're being led in a particular direction. Why do you think you are able to do that, to heed that calling and follow that calling and trust that calling now, as opposed to 14 years ago?
Oh, wow, that's such a great question.
Because you got the calling, because this is something I'm doing the same. I'm doing what I'm doing now that I got the calling for when I very first started my business. And I went this way, that way, this way, that way, this way, that way, down, up. And I'm like, I've just looked back over everything and I've just gone, I am literally to the T pretty much creating now and doing now what I was meant to do 10 years ago. But all of it's been necessary. All of it's been necessary. Like none of it's been a mistake. But I'm just like, how did I, and I convinced myself and I sold myself on an incredibly good story about why it was important I was doing this and why it was important I was doing that. And I just, like in hindsight, can see myself getting more and more cut off, more and more cut off, more and more. And this is the third time now where literally everything has been stripped away from me. I'm back to square one. I've deleted Kajabi. I've deleted Active Campaign. I have no list. I literally have no list. I'm literally said, you can start again from here, but you're not starting again, but you're starting again. You're going right back to the start of the starting line. You're not pretending you're here. You just be a new creation.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think it was for you that you said, come back to that? What shifted for you just to go, you know what, I'm doing it now?
Well, I could give you a long answer, but the short answer is really, who are you listening to? Because 14 years ago, I was listening to mentors in highly paid mastermind groups. I was in a mastermind group that I think the fee was like 15,000 a year. But by the time you did all the trips to the US and everything, it was probably costing me at least 25,000. That was before I factored in time out or whatever. And I just didn't have one mastermind. I had several mentors. So like, I was listening to voices who were saying, oh, you're doing really well with this. And if you do this, you're going to double that. And I was listening to that. And I was putting more attention and heed to that than I was on essentially the inner knowing. But what I don't think it's inner knowing. I think it's God talking to us. It's God talking through us. And so I think for me, just a lot of, I actually think I had to carry on. My experience were like where I just kept essentially giving my power away to those external authorities. They're not authorities, but giving my power away to that. And just like constantly have these lessons of, no, that's not how it works. That's not how it works.
So funny that you say that, because one of the things, obviously you taught me a few strategies and tactics and stuff, and there was a couple of them that just never gelled with me. And no criticism of you, by the way, in this. And then I've just been looking at other people doing things, and I'm like, how much of the decisions that I have made in my business have been influenced by what other people are telling me I should do, or what I'm seeing other people do, and then formulating an opinion around what I should or shouldn't be doing in relation to that? And it was quite a confronting thought, actually, to actually go, how I've been so influenced by the external world that I've actually lost sight of my unique, and I don't mean unique as in I'm the best or anything like that, but I'm like, I've always wanted to know what is my potential. Like, I want to know what my fullest potential is. And I do trust the fact that I've been put in business. There's no accident why I'm here. And when I looked back over my whole working life, everything has brought me to the work that I'm doing now. Everything. And I'm like, what's the Fiona shaped space in the world that fits perfectly, that fits the whole perfectly, that is me showing up in my fullest potential, doing whatever work that is that I'm meant to be doing in the most impactful, meaningful way, whether that's impacting just one person at home caring for my sister, or whether that's 250 million people or whatever, it doesn't really matter. And then I was just going, and that was when I just go, I'm getting rid of my list. I'm getting rid of my online program. It was like, I can throw all of this stuff out, because maybe it will come back. If it comes back, Bernadette, it'll come back. But it's like, how about you just go, you just do what lights your soul up, and you want to talk to people and you connect with people. And then all of these, I know you'll understand this, miraculous opportunities are coming in out of complete left field. People are messaging me, like old clients are messaging me, literally word for word, could you do something like this? And I've said, this is the program I'm delivering. This is the people that I'm delivering it to. And these opportunities are coming in. And I've said, I expect to get paid for the work that I do. I've done my free. I have provided so much support for people, but I cannot keep working with people that do not have the capacity to pay me anymore. I have to I have to look after my family. I have to look after myself, and I can serve those people in other ways. And I've just given myself, it's just, I can just show up and be me and do business or whatever I'm doing exactly the way that I want to do it. And there's no rules. And I'm not saying I'm rebelling. It's not a rebelling. It's actually a deep following. There's no rebelling in it. But I'm not interested in the world, what the world's telling me how I need to do this anymore.
Yeah. It's tricky, isn't it? Because people have said to me, one of the things that you do really well, Bernadette, is that you're really good at taking complex things and breaking it down into simple steps. But it was Einstein who said that things should be as simple as possible, but no simpler. And so I think that sometimes there's value in having a formula or a set of steps, but it would be a little bit like learning to dance. Do you ever see that thing where they put the feet on the floor, and people move their feet, but they're so focused on followed the steps that they're no longer listening to the music or feeling the music, and so not really dancing, they're just stepping,
go through the motions.
Going through the motions. And I think this is what happens in a world where if we're always just looking for the formula or the next best formula, and we've forgotten who we are. And ultimate who we are is divine. And the reason I want to talk more about receiving is because the ultimate thing to receive, I've talked about receiving financially, but we could talk about receiving love. We could talk about receiving sensual pleasure. We could talk about receiving affection. There's so many ways in which it's possible to receive. But the number one thing to receive is that we are actually divine. Start there. And then everything falls into place.
It's so fascinating that we're both having this shift this year. Like, I really can't tell you when this podcast first came to me, and that was something else I would love to talk about a little bit, is that kind of idea of intuition. But when this idea of this podcast had literally been through where I'd been a sniveling mess in this networking thing of 100 people crying on this girl's shoulder, and this release came. And then the next day I was like, I have to do this podcast. And it was so clear because of what had led up to it. And I was like, okay, this is going to take a lot of courage for me to talk about God and faith and spirituality and spiritual growth, and how's that going to align with my business? Like, this was what I was thinking, and I've never really wanted to talk too much about my faith because I haven't wanted to close off opportunities, and that was my thinking. And it was like, you ain't got nowhere left to hide with this now. Like, you need to share about this, because to not talk about it now is actually denying such a massive aspect of me, and I'm not willing to do that anymore. I can't. Same with you with the strategy. I can't just talk about mindset and not talk about God, because that we're just missing. It's like, it's not, or well-being and not talk about God. It's that it's not the full picture for me. I'm not saying everybody has to believe this. Anyway, so then I was like, I did this post and I said, I've got this idea, and it was like, I said, it's going to require a lot of courage, not just from me, but from people that are involved in it as well, because other people are going to have to come on and publicly talk about their faith. Like, they don't have to come on if they don't want to, but that's the idea of it. And anyway, it was like the love that came back to me from people's commenting on this really cryptic post that I'd written. It was very cryptic. I'm like, I'm meant to do this. Like, I'm very supported. Like, I could feel like the holding of the support. And I just thought, if people want to unfollow me or unlike me or whatever, I don't care. But initially what it felt like is a side project, right? It was like, oh, I'm going to do this side project. And then it was like, honestly, Bernadette, I had this visual in my mind of just going, whoop, it's not a side project. It's actually a redirection. And I'm like, even as I'm just absolute goosebumps as I'm talking to you, I can build my whole business on this idea now. I can build this whole business that it is centered on faith, that I'm never on my own. That connection with God, I can deepen that, and I can do that and bring my whole self to wherever it is that I'm going. And everything's opened up, and it's like everything else that doesn't align with that has literally been stripped away. It's almost like a memory that doesn't exist anymore.
Amazing.
And you're having the same experience. And then I was looking for you, and I'm like, where's Bernadette? And I'm just following all these little leads, and I'm like, does Bernadette want to come on my podcast? I'm like, I don't know, let's ask her. And then you go, oh, I'm having this whole transition where you've been completely redirected as well, and you're willingly going. But one thing that you did say and popped into my mind as you were talking about how the fact that we have, and when I asked you that original question about the last 14 years or whatever, all of that was necessary to get us to here. There's like a maturity that's required, because there's lessons and things that had to be let go of, and understandings, and you had to learn how to feel worthy. And like, you can't do it if you're not it.
I've been exploring receiving. Like, we have blocks to receiving.
Mm-hmm.
So like, control is a massive block to receiving. And so learning to surrender control, learning to let go, that's an important step. So I'll need to examine this. I need to explore it a bit further, but my guess is that if I went back over the last 14 years, I'd be able to show you these different moments where these blocks to my own receiving, like, I've had experiences that have helped me to work through them. That's my best answer right now.
But there's a maturity with that.
Of course, anytime we go through a lesson, when we think it's like an enjoyable lesson or a very painful lesson or something in between, we're always learning, right? My son has just come back he's going to be 18 next week, and he's just come
Wow.
back from a job where he worked in Scotland, and he's come back a bit early. It didn't exactly work out, but it also wasn't a terrible experience. And I was talking to him about, look, this is what you've come away with. Here are the things that you've learned. This is like experience that you have now that you can never, once you've got experience, that's the one thing you can't unlearn. Experience is experience, it's there. So yeah, I guess we do have to go through, like I say, positive, negative lessons and everything in between to gain that maturity and wisdom.
It's like the letting go, like you say, with the blocks. But I don't even know if you could call it a lesson. I guess it's a character development or a character correction or whatever that God does for us. One of the concepts I got really early on, and different teachers talk about in different ways, was this idea of spiritual superiority. So, when you get a little bit of knowledge about something and then you start judging everybody else because they're not it, that's been a really big lesson I've had to learn along the way, I think, is actually like I am not the answers. I'm just the willing vessel. And there's such a humility in that. It's deeply humbling. So
that's prompted me to share with you an experience that I had. This was before I'd even started my online business, but I was already working with corporate clients and doing okay, doing quite well actually. But one of my favorite things to do with an afternoon off is I'd go down to Borders, my local bookshop, and there was a little cafe in the bookshop, and I'd this is pre-Kindle clearly, grab a bunch of books off the shelf, go and sit and flick through them to see which ones I wanted to buy while having a coffee. And I'm just there in my happy place doing my thing. And suddenly I looked up and it was like God was in the room. And I could just see all around me in this coffee shop, there was like what looked like a mum and daughter having a disagreement. And you've got a couple over here look madly in love, and just like people at all stages of emotion, just engaged in different ways. And I could just sense God with every single person going, isn't she exquisite? Isn't she delightful? Even the person that was grumpy or having a disagreement, just God's pleasure and such massive enjoyment in each of these like individuals. And it felt like it lasted for several minutes. It was probably only a few seconds. But what pulled me, so it was this incredible space to be in. I could just perceive God's love for everybody in that moment, those moments. But what pulled me out of it was judgment. Someone walked in and I judged them in an unloving way, and it was like I was straight out of it. Mm. But I guess that was like a really powerful moment of receiving for me back then, to like just have that experience, even just a glimpse of it. And when I said once you've had an experience, you can't not have it. That's been there. I reckon that happened around 1998, 1999, maybe 2000. So 24 years ago. And so it's like, that was like a little glimpse. And it's been there, just nudging me ever since.
Bernadette, I'm really happy and delighted that we're very connected today. I think that I really want to stay in better touch with you, actually.
Talk, I think. We've got some more talking to do, I think.
We really do. But Bernadette, you were absolutely a gift sent by God to me at a really challenging time in my life. Honestly, like I just knew, I knew and I trusted that you were the one for me to work with. Like I never doubted it, ever. And because I asked for help, and I was shown lots of different things, and I really had to just check in and go, which is the right path for me? And then it was just like, it was so simple, the decision to work with you. And it was a big decision, obviously, and a big commitment and all the rest of it, but it was never hard. A lot of effort involved, but it was never hard. And I'm really thrilled that you're at a space in your life now where you are able to really deeply lean into all of the wonderful wisdom that you have to share and experience and everything that you have to share in whatever way feels the truest for you. And when we say true, it's not like it feels true to me. It's a different truth.
Yeah. You see, what I love about what you just shared there about where you asked for help and you were shown different opportunities is first and foremost, you were open to receive. And there could have been there are so many people that teach the things that I teach. At that particular moment in your life, like I was the right flavor, just like sort of match up with your flavor just perfectly, and magic happened. And I just want to remind everyone listening that those opportunities exist like all over in every moment. So I'm thinking of people listening to this who maybe came to this because there's something they're struggling with or there's a challenge that they're facing and they're like hoping for some inspirational guidance as a result of hearing this conversation. And what I want to say to you is that like the answer is already around you. It's already like the answer to your problem. It has already been divinely provided. It's there. And now your challenge is to stay open to how that is being provided. And then as your example, Fiona, is have the courage within yourself. And if there are challenges, then that's probably a sign that it's the direction you're meant to be going in. But it's to show up and do what it took. Look what you did. You spoke to my business partner and you negotiated the discount that you got the discount that had already closed. So to just know that whatever problem you're facing, whatever challenge you think is insurmountable, it's not. In the divine mind, it's not. And the answer has already been provided.
Before you were born.
Maybe even lifetimes earlier. So.
Yeah, but that to finish up on that brings me so much comfort. I just think, gosh, this is all, and I don't mean a nonsense in to diminish it or dismiss it, but it's just like, Fiona, when I can bring back up to that higher perspective of it's just in unfolding it perfectly as it's meant to. Just be present in my heart, not judging in this moment now. I'll see the solution and I'll be able to move into it.
Yeah, definitely.
So more open to receiving. And the only time we can do that is in the present moment when we're aware and not judging.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
And trusting. Yeah. But this idea of no judgment, that's been really understanding what that means. And you've had that beautiful experience of it. And now you can share that with people because that's the wisdom that people connect to. It's not you learned it in a book or watched it on YouTube. Or learned it from a mentor even. You actually lived it and experienced it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Bernadette, where is the best place for people to get in touch with you now?
I'd love to say come to my website, but there is no sales funnel for this. Like I'm literally honestly, even getting your invitation to speak here was a sign for me like, oh, now's the time. Because this year I have clients that I work with, but I haven't been promoting. That's why you haven't seen me online. I haven't been promoting. I haven't been doing masterclasses or Facebook Lives. I stopped putting content on my YouTube channel. So it's really been like, just like not sitting quietly because there's also been a lot happening in my life. But yeah, I honestly don't feel the need to rush ahead and go, oh, I'm going to do a program. I haven't even thought that far ahead. For me, it's just the first step is going, okay, I'm going to say yes to sharing this. I'm going to say yes. I recognize that this is a message that wants to come through me, that there's a divine plan for me in sharing this. And that's basically the stage I'm at. But the best place to connect with me is on Facebook. I may or may not be active there in the next few weeks, but I do have a Facebook group. And I'm certain that what I'll be doing, because I've got a lot of people in there that have worked with me a long time, and I know that there are people in my audience that will be excited to hear about this. So what I'll probably do is, rather than start on a group, I will migrate that group across. So that would still be the best place to come and hang out with me. So if I'm on Facebook, send me a friend request and I'll send you a link to my group.
So we'll put your Facebook profile in the show notes as well too, Bernadette.
Thank you.
But thank you so much.
Thanks. It's been a real pleasure.
As this episode draws to a close, I just want to remind you that you are never alone. If today's episode resonated with you, if you found comfort, hope, or inspiration, I really do invite you to take a moment to reach out. You can connect with The Happiness Hunter on social media or at thehappinesshunter.com. Make sure you subscribe through your favourite podcatcher, leave a rating or a review to help others find this show, or you can simply share this episode with someone who might need to hear these words today. Together, we can spread hope, courage, and the unwavering belief that no matter how dark the night may seem, the light is always there too. Until next time, remember to embrace this light within you and let it guide you. And remember, you are never on your own.